April 2001. The morning air at Almaden Quicksilver Park, in the hills southwest of San Jose, California, was thick with the smell of damp earth and mercury ore dust. The faint light from a worker's drilling rig reflected off a thin layer of fog, illuminating something no one expected to find there. Central, I need a forensics unit at the old Almaden mine site, possible human remains. The supervisor's voice crackled over the radio, calm but chilling. What began as a routine geological survey turned into a discovery that would shake the city of San Jose. Something that would awaken a darkness buried for over 25 years. Amid the red clay soil, they found fragments of human bones, a pair of old Levi's jeans, a rotted belt, and a mud-caked brass button. A few inches away was a chipped tooth fragment, the first clue that would lead investigators back to the fall of 1975, when a young woman named Anna Lee vanished after her shift at the Capitol Drive-In Theater. For nearly 3 decades, Anna's disappearance existed only in memories and faded flyers. A case shelved with the cold label, "Missing Person," unresolved. Her family waited, the police forgot, and the city grew atop soil that still hid the truth. But the excavation at Almaden was not just the end of a missing person case. It was the first domino in a chain of events that would expose misconduct, lies, and secrets the San Jose Police Department had covered up. Because when authorities matched the DNA to a name in old files, the suspect was not a drifter, not a lurking predator, but a former officer, one who had led the search for Anna that year. A man who wore a badge, swore to uphold justice, and lived among the community for nearly 30 years, carrying an unimaginable secret. The Anna Lee case was not just a mystery solved, it was a testament to the power of forensic science, the persistence of young investigators who refused to let files gather dust, and the voice that DNA technology gave back to silenced victims. It was also a story of a city forced to confront itself, about trust, betrayal, and the cost of losing standards. Before we dive into the shocking details of this case, please hit subscribe and like the video. Your support helps us bring America's cold cases back into the light. Tonight, we'll return to San Jose in 1975, tracing the remaining clues: a bicycle, a red scarf fragment, a shoe print under moonlight, to uncover how a seemingly small disappearance shook the foundation of a city's trust. This is a story of loss, persistence, and justice delayed, but never forgotten. The last night of summer 1975, San Jose was still a slowly growing city, a mix of emerging industrial zones and quiet old neighborhoods under pale yellow sodium streetlights. The dry, warm daytime air gave way to a thin layer of fog along Monterey Road, where birch trees stood still in the light breeze. At the Capitol Drive-In Theater, the final shift stretched late into the night due to a malfunctioning projector, forcing staff to stay longer than usual. Anna Lee, 19, a sophomore at San Jose State University, cleaned up the ticket booth, checked the logbook, and said goodbye to the manager before leaving. She pedaled her silver bicycle out of the parking lot, carrying a small brown leather purse. On her way home, her bike's light cast beams on the wet asphalt, the metallic clink blending with the steady chirp of crickets. The quiet road saw little traffic, only the distant glow of an open gas station. At a small boarding house in South San Jose, her roommate woke in the night to the sound of a passing car and noticed Anna's bed was still empty. By morning, thinking Anna might have stayed with friends, the roommate grew concerned when she didn't return by noon, and no one answered her phone. Checking the room, everything was untouched. A suitcase of clothes, student papers, a wristwatch on the desk. No sign she'd left for long. By afternoon, Anna's mother drove from her home in Santa Clara. She retraced her daughter's usual route, stopping at corners, asking passers-by if they'd seen a young woman with dark hair on a silver bicycle the previous night. No one recalled clearly. She stopped at the Capitol Drive-In, spoke to the manager, and learned Anna left alone after her shift. Dusk fell fast, streetlights dim and hazy, the air growing heavy. Around 8 p.m., she walked into the San Jose Police Department on Mission Street, carrying a photo of Anna in her theater uniform. She filled out a report, recounted her daughter's routine, and signed the missing person form. The on-duty officer logged the time, assigned a case number, and entered the details into the record book. An internal notice was printed and pinned to the precinct's bulletin board under missing person. From that moment, Anna Lee's name was officially listed among San Jose's missing. No one in that small precinct room that night knew that simple entry would sit in the archives for nearly 30 years before being reopened. The next morning, as the case was logged, the San Jose Police Department launched an urgent search plan. Detective Thomas Grady, assigned to missing persons in the city's south, was named lead investigator. He began by mapping Anna's usual nightly route from the Capitol Drive-In on Monterey Boulevard through Kelly Park, across small side streets to her boarding house on South 10th Street. A topographic map of Santa Clara County was spread on his desk, and Grady drew a 5-mile radius circle around the theater, the assumed epicenter. Each section of the circle was coded and assigned to a team. Officers were dispatched to the field that morning. Split into 4 teams, they carried measuring tapes, cameras, evidence bags, and logbooks. The first team checked the main road, inspecting shoulders, ditches, and metal fences. The second scoured empty lots east of the theater. The third moved south, where dirt roads led to old farmland. The fourth canvassed nearby residential areas. Police noted every small clue, from tire tracks to trampled grass to recently dropped litter. Around noon, an officer from the south team radioed and found a red object caught on a fence. Grady rushed to the scene. The area was a narrow stretch of Monterey Highway near the Metcalf intersection, where the ground was low and damp, marked with old tire tracks. The object was a dark red fabric, about 3 inches long, snagged on rusted wire. Grady ordered photos, measurements from the road, and the fabric carefully removed into a sealed paper bag. 15 meters away, a shallow bicycle tire track ran a few meters before stopping abruptly. Nearby was a patch of disturbed soil with a large men's shoe print. As afternoon sunlight slanted over the Santa Cruz Mountains, the team finished photographing and collecting samples. The site was temporarily marked with reflective stakes and logged in a preliminary report. Grady ordered the area preserved overnight, barring any movement until forensics arrived. The first evidence bags were sent to SJPD headquarters in the fading orange light of sunset. Monterey Highway fell silent again, save for nylon tape flapping in the breeze, signaling something unusual had happened there. Early the next morning, with fog still thick on the ground, the Monterey Highway roadside was cordoned off again. Yellow nylon tape formed a temporary barrier around the site where the red fabric was found. Santa Clara County Forensics and SJPD crime scene unit vehicles parked a few dozen meters away. Early sunlight hit the dark, dry soil, glinting off dew-covered grass. Here, between 2 paths into Almaden Valley, the bicycle track, shoe print, and compacted soil remained clear. Forensics set up a site perimeter, placing numbered stakes at each clue's location with white plastic tags. Their task was to collect any remaining samples within a 15-meter radius of the fabric. A technician used a Rolleiflex camera, shooting panoramic views from 4 angles, then close-ups of each detail. Photos were time-stamped for cross-referencing with a site map. Another group sampled soil at 3 depths, sealed and dated, coordinated, and signed paper bags. At the marked B area, forensics noted a clear shoe print in dried clay, toe pointing inward, heel toward the road. The diamond-patterned sole measured about 11.5 inches. Grady, on site, noted large size, likely men's shoe. The print was photographed from multiple angles and cast in plaster. At C, the disturbed soil area, forensics used a light to scan for more traces, but found no blood or new fibers. On the fence where the red fabric was found, a technician, using rubber gloves, retrieved a short brown hair, about 3 centimeters, caught in the wire. It was placed in a glass tube with a rubber stopper, sealed with red tape. All actions were logged. September 16, 1975. Sample from a 1, collected by technician Robert Valdez. Nearby, Soil under the bicycle track, faintly smelling of gasoline, was sampled separately. A small oil droplet spread into a sheen. It was pipetted into a glass vial, sealed, and labeled oil sample. SAE30, possible car or motorcycle engine. All evidence, numbered SJ75309, A01 to 09, included fabric, hair, 3 soil samples, oil sample, plaster shoe print, 2 film rolls, and a site map. Before leaving, forensics remeasured the site, 43 meters long, 11 meters wide, east-west orientation. They drew a black ink map on A2 paper, noting Monterey Highway mile markers. This map would guide the investigation. No drag marks, scattered soil, or personal items beyond the fabric were found. Forensics concluded preliminarily, victim likely stopped or was stopped here, then moved from the scene. A field report noted, no blood or tissue found. Site intact, no disturbance beyond noted marks. When work concluded, evidence was placed in a metal container, sealed, and sent to SJPD's evidence room. Each item was logged with signatures from Valdez and Grady. Per 1975 protocol, the 4-page handwritten scene report included 6 Polaroid photos for temporary record. Grady signed off, noting completion at 6:10 p.m., September 16, 1975. That afternoon, at SJPD's technical room, evidence was rechecked before final sealing. Soil and oil samples went to cold storage, hair and fabric to separate envelopes. The plaster shoe print, marked blue, was shelved per protocol. Annalee's preliminary file was updated with physical evidence, Monterey HWY site, listing items SJ75309A0109. A scene report copy, map and film negatives went to the General Investigations Unit for archiving. Grady reviewed all documents, marking a red dot on the map at the site, noting Zone 1, primary evidence site. This area would later be considered Annalee's last known location. The scene report was sent to SJPD's central office with a recommendation: continue expanding search southwest toward Almaden Valley, prioritize trails and secluded turnoffs. The file logged the scene's completion and was archived. From here, the Monterey Highway site became the investigation's starting point, the only place with physical traces of Annalee's disappearance. After the scene report reached SJPD, the General Investigations Unit expanded the case, witness interviews and suspect screening. All Monterey Highway data, maps, coordinates, photos, formed the basis for personnel assignments. Detective Thomas Grady led the team, with 3 officers splitting areas: Capitol Drive-In, South 10th Street Residences, and Monterey Highway, the victim's main route. At the theater, investigators interviewed 8 staff and 2 final patrons from Anna's last shift. The ticket clerk recalled her leaving the booth after the last show, carrying her purse and jacket. The gate guard saw her bicycle's light heading toward Monterey, but noticed no vehicles following. Another employee heard a small motorcycle engine, like a 1970s Honda, but couldn't pinpoint its direction. All 10 stated Anna had no conflicts or issues at the theater and didn't speak to strangers before leaving. Statements were recorded and logged in the September 17th interview report. The second investigative team canvassed the boarding house where Anna lived. They spoke with 4 tenants on her floor. One recalled hearing footsteps in the hallway near midnight, but wasn't sure who it was. No one saw Anna return that night. A list of friends and acquaintances was compiled, including 2 classmates and a former acquaintance. The ex confirmed he had parted ways with Anna months earlier and had an alibi for the time of the incident. Classmates said she seemed normal, showing no signs of worry or being followed. The report concluded no close associates raised suspicion. Meanwhile, the third team searched Monterey Highway and nearby neighborhoods. They went door to door, focusing on homes within a 1-mile radius of the scene. A farmer reported hearing a motorcycle engine stop, then rev loudly toward Almaden Valley that night. Another person mentioned seeing car headlights parked on the roadside for a few minutes before disappearing. A notable detail came from William Trent, living near the Almaden Road intersection, who said he saw a white police car parked in a vacant lot around midnight. When questioned, he was certain. "It was definitely a police car. I saw the SJPD logo on the door." This report prompted a review of all patrol car logs from the night of September 13th into the early hours of September 14th, 1975. Grady requested the command unit provide a full list of vehicles active during that shift. Logs showed 6 patrol cars across different areas, 2 operating in South San Jose. One of the 2 was recorded as patrolling Almaden Valley between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m., the time frame when the victim was believed to have vanished. The log entry showed this car was driven by Grady himself, with Officer Robert Hale as his partner. When questioned, Hale stated that during that shift, Grady sent him back to the station early to handle paperwork, while Grady said he would continue patrolling the area for about an hour. The radio system logged patrol car #214 losing contact for 17 minutes, a brief but notable gap. Grady explained it as radio interference from driving in the hilly area, common with the era's equipment. Still, the internal report noted the brief signal loss as a point of interest in the case file. No other police vehicles were logged in the Almaden area during that time. Other patrol cars had continuous radio signals, verified by the communication center. The team requested a review of other patrol reports, but found no information related to the disappearance or unusual activity that night. The sighting of a police car near the evidence site shifted the case's direction. However, with no witnesses to specific actions, no photos or direct records, the theory was noted as an unverified possibility. In the following days, investigators questioned additional shop owners, truck drivers, and regular passers-by along Monterey Highway. No one provided solid information about Anna. A truck driver mentioned seeing a girl cycling near an old gas station that night, but his description of her clothing didn't match Anna's. Another reported a black motorcycle speeding toward Almaden's woods, but its license plate was unclear. After over 10 additional interviews, the investigation still identified no clear suspect. The Phase 1 case summary, dated September 20th, 1975, concluded, "No evidence or testimony identifies a specific individual linked to the disappearance. Evidence from the Monterey Highway site remains the only basis." All data was sent to forensics for further analysis, while the team continued searching toward Almaden's woods. Questions about the police car sighting were noted separately under unverified sightings, insufficient for pursuit, but a detail ensuring the case would never be fully closed. Santa Clara County's forensics lab received all evidence from the Monterey Highway site on the morning of September 18, 1975. The samples, sealed in brown paper bags labeled SJ75309 A01-09, came with the scene report signed by Detective Grady. Chief Forensic Scientist Dr. Raymond Shue assigned technicians to inspect and categorize the materials. Work began with the fabric, hair, soil samples, oil sample, plaster shoe print, and 2 rolls of scene photos. Each item was unsealed under magnifying lamps, with physical state, smell, color, and integrity logged before preliminary analysis. The hair sample was examined first under a microscope. At 200x magnification, the short, dark brown hair showed a broken shaft, no root, and a rough cut, suggesting it was torn by force or friction. Dr. Shue noted, possibly male human hair does not match victim's hair color. Without a root, blood type or DNA testing was impossible. The sample was stored in a glass tube, resealed with red wax, and kept at 4 degrees Celsius. The preliminary report stated, hair sample, unknown male origin. Next were the soil samples, labeled A1, A2, A3, taken from different depths. Technicians observed glossy oil on the surface under a microscope, with a faint smell of unburned fuel. Basic chemical testing with sulfuric acid revealed paraffin-based oil, viscosity matching SAE-30 engine oil, commonly used in cars and motorcycles. Trace additives with phosphorus and zinc matched lubricants for 1970s Ford and Harley-Davidson vehicles. Issue marked in red, engine oil. Possible vehicle leak. The oil sample was split. One part sealed in a glass vial, another analyzed via chromatography. Results showed used oil with carbon residue and soil dust, indicating it fell while an engine was running, not deliberately spilled. Technicians concluded, vehicle likely stopped at the site with engine on. A small red stain on the fabric's edge was tested. Too little for full analysis, it was identified as type O positive blood via classic ABO agglutination. Annalee's blood type was A, so the sample didn't match. It was considered foreign, possibly from a suspect or third party. Chu's supplemental report noted, blood type O limited sample, foreign to victim. The plaster shoe print was sent to morphology. Under angled light, it measured 11.2 inches, with a diamond pattern and small grooves. Matching Red Wing boots, issued to local law enforcement from 1973. 1975. The evidence room confirmed SJPD supplied these boots to patrol officers for 3 years. However, their commonality made identifying a specific wearer difficult. The report to investigators stated, sole pattern consistent with standard issue police boots. The lab used manual tools, optical microscopes, hand-conducted chemical tests, and carbon paper notes. No digital imaging or DNA identification existed. Data was handwritten, typed on white paper, and duplicated twice for records. Post-analysis samples were stored in separate envelopes, wax-sealed, and coded to the case. The lab labeled retain long-term storage on 3 main samples: hair, soil, oil. Others were kept in evidence refrigeration for 30 days, awaiting further orders. By the afternoon of September 19, Dr. Chu and 2 technicians finalized a 12-page report with black and white photos of the hair structure, shoe print, and oil composition chart. The typed conclusion read, 1. Hair, brown, cut, unidentified origin. 2. Soil, contaminated with engine lubricant, SAE30. 3. Blood, type O, limited sample. 4. Shoe print, compatible with Red Wing police issue, size approx. 11. No additional biological evidence recovered. The report was sent to SJPD's General Investigations Unit and a copy to Grady. Per protocol, he signed for receipt and added it to the case file. In the log, Grady noted, verify oil source, possible agency, or civilian vehicle. Next to it, he lightly circled police issue boots. That evening, the lab resealed remaining samples. The hair went into a small glass tube, the fabric between protective glass and soil and oil in separate metal boxes. All were transferred to Santa Clara's evidence vault, filed in drawer 43B among hundreds of unsolved cases. The label read, SJ75309, A-tive evidence. The next day, a summary was read in a brief meeting with investigators, lab representatives, and the district attorney. Conclusion: no suspect identified. However, the police issue shoe print and engine oil matching patrol vehicles were noted for verification. Technicians recommended checking all police cars from the September 13, 14 shift to rule out coincidence. Grady was assigned this task. He listed 6 vehicles, including his own from that night. Each was checked for oil leaks and lubricant type. Preliminary results showed 4 used SA30 oil, including car hash 214, Grady's, which had a fresh oil change that week and hadn't accumulated enough miles for residue. The maintenance report wasn't considered evidence, but was filed in technical records. By late September, no further forensic results emerged. The lab closed its analysis, issuing a memo. No additional materials remained for testing. The case entered a waiting phase for further field investigation. In refrigerated storage, small sample tubes sat quietly, meticulously labeled, holding the only clues from an empty Monterey Highway roadside, where every soil grain, oil drop, and hair became silent witnesses to a mystery that in 1975, science lacked tools to solve. On September 25, 1975, SJPD's General Investigations Unit held a Phase 1 review meeting for Anna Lee's disappearance. All relevant units attended: Detective Thomas Grady, Santa Clara Forensics, the district attorney, and 3 search team officers. The conference table was covered with maps, scene photos, and typed reports. Each section was reviewed, each sample cross-checked, but the conclusion remained: no body, no credible witnesses, no specific suspect identified. All leads ended at the Monterey Highway site, where the red fabric and bicycle track were found. The forensics team presented their findings again. The brown hair was not the victim's, the type O blood did not match, the engine oil could come from any vehicle, and the size 11 shoe print matched a common police-issue boot from the era. No physical evidence could identify a specific individual. The prosecutor concluded that the available data was insufficient to pursue charges or expand the investigation criminally. Grady proposed continued public information collection and review of missing persons files from nearby counties, but this was not approved due to lack of supporting evidence. The summary report was finalized by late morning. The typed conclusion read: no body recovered, no viable suspect identified. No further evidence available. Below, the investigation team leader signed, recommending a pause in active pursuit until new data emerged. Per police protocol, missing persons cases without criminal evidence were reclassified as missing person, unresolved, after 30 days of no progress. This process was applied to Anna Lee's file. That afternoon, all evidence, labeled SJ75309 A0109, was transferred from forensics to the Santa Clara Evidence Vault for long-term storage. Each item was resealed to new standards, placed in metal boxes, and labeled Preserve Indefinite. The transfer log listed 17 items, signed by forensics and evidence management. The hair, soil, and oil samples were stored in a refrigerated section, while the plaster shoe print and fabric were placed in cabinet 43B, reserved for unresolved cases. The labels read SJ75309 A09 1975. In SJPD's office, Grady reviewed the entire file one last time. He marked in red the notes about the patrol car and engine oil, but when submitted, these details remained technical notes, not evidence. The meeting minutes, numbered 112/75, were filed with the forensic report in the main case folder. The final page included the lead investigator's summary. All search efforts, witness interviews, and forensic analysis were conducted within the limits of available resources. No clear criminal act identified. Recommend filing and periodic monitoring. On September 30th, an internal memo stated, Case SJ75309A, placed in storage, status, missing person F unresolved. At the Santa Clara Evidence Vault, the technician logged the case code, transfer time, handler, and storage location. On the steel shelves, dozens of envelopes and bags sat in rows, including Anna Lee's file, less than 20 pages thick. Next to case number SJ75309A, a handwritten note in blue ink read, "Hold until further notice." In October 1975, the search officially ended. Teams were reassigned, and the Monterey Highway site was unsealed. Yellow warning signs were removed, leaving only faint red paint marks on the road where stakes once stood. Forensics issued a final memo, confirming no new samples for analysis. Anna Lee's disappearance was added to the cold file list, with 2 other 1975 missing persons cases. Upon completing administrative tasks, SJPD's records unit made 2 copies. 1 paper file for the Central Archive, 1 microfilm for long-term preservation. Each year, such files were reviewed once, reopened only with new findings or special requests. For Anna Lee's case, no further reports were submitted. In the department's manual system, the final 1975 entry read, "No additional evidence, case inactive." By month's end, Grady signed the case handover to archives. He folded a report copy, placed it in a yellow folder labeled SJ75309A, and gave it to the vault technician. As the steel evidence vault door closed, Neon lights reflected off rows of refrigerators and file cabinets, illuminating freshly sealed red labels. Annalee's file sat between two other cases, neat and silent. No one knew it would be the last time anyone at the San Jose Police Department touched it for years. The duty log had a single typed line, filed for indefinite storage, pending further developments. After transfer to the Santa Clara Evidence Vault, Annalee's disappearance faded among hundreds of other unsolved cases from the 1970s. In 1976, the General Investigations Unit restructured, prioritizing resources for rising violent crime downtown. File SJ-70-5309A was marked inactive, meaning no dedicated staff monitored it. Reports, photos, and evidence were neatly stored in the vault's fourth metal drawer, sealed with red wax. During subsequent inventories, the file remained untouched, with no retrieval requests. In the early 1980s, as California reviewed long-term missing persons cases, a group of young SJPD investigators proposed re-examining cases with preserved physical evidence. Annalee's file ranked 42nd on the preliminary list. However, the proposal was rejected due to costs for evidence retesting exceeding allocated budgets. An April 1982 internal memo stated, "Due to financial constraints, missing persons cases without bodies or definitive criminal evidence will not be prioritized for reinvestigation." This halted all activity on SJ-70-5309A. From 1983 to 1989, the Santa Clara Evidence Vault relocated twice. Old files, including Annalee's, were packed in cardboard boxes, relabeled, and moved to a new facility on Kirtner Avenue. Case 75-309A was listed under cold storage, Door 3B17. A 1985 inventory noted, "Seals intact, condition stable." No items were flagged for review. By the late 1980s, fingerprint and enzyme testing emerged, but these were limited to open homicide cases. Annalee's case remained missing person, unresolved. Over the years, her name appeared once in an internal long-term missing person summary, then vanished from SJPD's annual meetings. Officers from the initial search retired or transferred, and the case became part of an aging archive no one recalled. In 1992, a pilot DNA analysis program prompted a Santa Clara forensic technician to list pre-1980 cases with stored hair or blood. Annalee's file surfaced, but the samples didn't qualify. The hair lacked a root, and the blood was too degraded. An internal report concluded, "Insufficient biological material, testing not feasible." For the second time in nearly 2 decades, the chance to reopen the case was dismissed, due to technical and funding limitations. In subsequent years, the old evidence vault was reorganized with a new coding system. Cases were color-coded by priority: red for active, yellow for suspended, green for long-term storage. SJ-70-5309A received a green label marked Retain, Indefinite. A 1995 inventory note read, "File intact, awaiting review if program funding increases." This was the last mention in the decade's administrative records. In spring 1999, Detective Thomas Grady, the original lead investigator, retired after 31 years. Recognized for achievements in other criminal cases, he was nominated for Officer of the Year. During a review of his handled cases, Annalee's file was noted briefly, "Closed file, no further action." No evidence or data review was requested. In that year's routine inventory, a new vault technician confirmed SJ-70-5309A's seals were intact, bags undamaged and label signatures legible. The 1999 storage report ended, "Condition stable." No review requested. After over 20 years, Annalee's disappearance vanished from SJPD's active lists, existing only as a file, less than an inch thick, stored silently in a drawer among hundreds of old codes, unopened, unqueried, with no notes since its closure in fall 1975. On the morning of April 17, 2001, a San Jose Water Department crew surveyed an old pipeline in Almaden Quicksilver Park, a nature preserve 10 miles southwest of downtown. The former mercury mine had steep terrain, scattered sinkholes, and old trails covered in weeds. As a hand drill tested soil compaction, the bit hit something hard and recoiled. A worker dug with a small shovel, uncovering an ivory-colored bone in red clay. Initially thought to be animal remains, the curved shape of a human skull prompted an immediate call to police. The Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office response team arrived within 40 minutes. The area was cordoned off in a 30-meter radius, with barriers and GPS coordinates marked. Overcast skies and lingering fog left the ground damp and mineral-scented. Officers identified the excavation site near a gentle slope to a dry creek, about 300 meters from the main trail. A partial skull and shoulder bone protruded from the soil, with a grayish denim fragment nearby. Forensics was summoned, beginning a manual excavation, carefully removing soil layers to preserve bone structure. By noon, the site was covered with windproof tarps and a field tent for detailed work. At 60 centimeters deep, technicians uncovered pelvic and arm bones, plus more fabric clinging to the skeleton. A pair of pre-1976 Levi's jeans with copper buttons, heavily decomposed but intact at the fly and pocket trim, was found. Nearby was a rotted leather belt with a rusted green buckle. A small brass button in the soil was bagged separately. The remaining jawbone retained 2 front teeth, 1 chipped, a rare, identifiable trait. When excavation concluded, forensics brushed the bones clean, mapping each piece on a coordinate grid. Panoramic photos were logged in the scene file. The remains were placed in a specialized wooden box, sealed, and transported to the Santa Clara Forensics Lab for identification. The initial report concluded, female, aged 18-22, time of death, estimated over 20 years. No other personal items, jewelry, or identification were found, but the jeans, button, and belt suggested a disappearance in the mid-1970s. 2 days later, the Forensics Lab and Santa Clara Investigations Bureau compared dental records. The state's Missing Persons Archive was queried for women missing from San Jose, Santa Clara, between 1970 and 1980. Anna Lee's name appeared under Missing Person, Unresolved, 1975, with a dental record copy from her university. Forensic dentists matched the sample to 3 traits: wear on the left molar, a silver filling in tooth 8, and a chipped right front tooth. The report confirmed the victim's identity: Anna Lee, female, born 1956, missing September 14, 1975. The news reached SJPD by the afternoon of April 19. The records unit reopened case SJ-75-309A for cross-referencing. The original report was retrieved from the Kirtner Avenue vault, still dusty with intact seals. Technicians reviewed each page, comparing the new site's coordinates to the 1975 map. The locations were less than 3 miles apart by air. The geographic match led investigators to conclude the Almaden remains were the resolution to the 1975 disappearance. On April 20th, the site was reopened for additional collection. Forensics swept for metal and found 2 small items, a broken zipper and a rusted eyeglass frame fragment. Both were added to the evidence list, coded to the original case. An updated digital site map marked the body's location with a red circle, labeled Site B, Almaden Recovery. The forensics report determined cause of death inconclusive, but burial posture and soil patterns suggested human involvement. A criminal act was highly likely. The report was sent to the Santa Clara District Attorney and SJPD. For the first time in over 25 years, Anna Lee's name reappeared in SJPD's internal records. Updated case reopened, pending homicide review. A formal notice went to the General Investigations Unit. On April 21, 2001, SJPD issued a decision to reactivate SJ-75-309A. The commander's brief note read, "Cold case reclassified as homicide investigation." From that moment, the forgotten 1975 disappearance entered a new phase. Evidence dormant in steel cabinets for nearly 3 decades was brought to light. while the Almaden discovery site was preserved, covered with protective mesh and marked under forensic review. In the vault's basement, the metal box labeled SJ75309A was unsealed, preparing for the first comparison of old and new scenes, launching the reinvestigation of a case long consigned to oblivion by the San Jose Police Department. After the remains were identified as Annalise, SJPD established the Cold Case Unit, managed by the General Investigations Unit, tasked with reviewing unresolved long-term missing persons cases. Case SJ75309A was the first selected. The unit comprised 3 members: investigator Olivia Carter, forensic technician Evan Torres, and data specialist Harold Kim, under Lieutenant Walter Reeves' supervision. Their initial task was to recover, reread, and categorize all 1975 reports, evidence, photos, and original documents. On April 25, 2001, Box SJ75309A was retrieved from the Kirtner Avenue vault, unsealed with representatives from the vault, prosecutor, and cold case unit present. It contained 7 large envelopes of typed documents, 6 negative film rolls, a hand-drawn site map, and 8 small evidence bags holding the fabric, soil, oil, hair, and plaster shoe print. Carter arranged the materials on a table, comparing original reports, forensic logs, and the scene map. Within hours, discrepancies emerged. The 1975 site map, drawn by Grady, placed the fabric 8 meters from Monterey Highway, but the forensic report listed 18 meters. Both documents, signed the same day, lacked cross-verification between investigator and technician. Additionally, Grady's map noted a bicycle track extending west, absent from the technical report. Torres remarked, 2 site maps were created separately, without cross-checking. In the evidence file, Carter found another issue. Each item had a sealed label with signatures of the collector and reviewer. However, the main evidence bags, fabric, hair, soil, bore only Grady's signature, not technician Robert Valdez, listed in the scene report. Checking the 1975 Santa Clara vault log, Valdez's signature for these items was absent, suggesting evidence may have been submitted or sealed without a second witness, violating protocol. Grady's handwritten note in the original report raised suspicion. In the preliminary scene analysis, he wrote, "No signs of struggle or foreign objects." Yet, scene photos showed disturbed soil and overlapping shoe prints, details later noted in the forensic report. Torres compared negatives, finding 2 photos with black ink marks, indicating they were reprints from copies, not originals. In a 1976 internal memo, Carter read a brief typed line: "Investigation suspended due to lack of criminal evidence. Evidence stored in 43B. Grady signed as author, but the approval line was blank. Protocol required a commander's signature to close a case, yet this lacked one." Carter noted in her review, "Chain of command incomplete, potential procedural omission." 3 days later, the cold case unit completed reviewing all 213 original pages, renumbered in the new system. They compiled a list of 12 inconsistencies between investigative and forensic reports, mainly regarding scene distances, movement direction, collection timing, and missing signature verification. Item 11 stated, "Key evidence not sealed per parallel protocol. Verified chain of custody." After compilation, Carter submitted a preliminary assessment to Reeves. He ordered a recheck of all physical evidence to ensure 1975 samples remained intact. On April 30th, the evidence bags were transferred to the Santa Clara Forensics Lab under temperature control. Torres logged the first unsealing in 26 years. Each envelope was opened in a sterile hood, visually inspected, rephotographed, weighed, and checked for temperature and dryness. All samples were intact, wax seals secure, with only slight ink fading on labels. Forensics confirmed the hair, soil, and oil samples were viable for modern reanalysis. The fabric and shoe print were for comparison only. The condition report concluded, preserved integrity, viable for reanalysis. Carter requested DNA extraction from the hair if possible, soil comparison with Almaden's terrain, and engine oil reanalysis via spectrometry. Samples were transferred to a new custody chain, individually coded. While reconstructing the file, Kim reviewed old data logs and found another error. The initial evidence transfer log was dated September 18, 1975, but envelope seals were marked September 17. The one-day discrepancy suggested evidence may have been handled before the official report. This was added to the anomaly list as item 13, noted, possibility of premature handling of evidence prior to official filing. Finally, the cold case unit completed a 27-page summary report submitted to Commander Reeves in early May 2001. The report concluded, discrepancies in the 1975 procedures indicate the case requires a comprehensive reinvestigation. Evidence remains intact and viable for reanalysis with current technology. Reeves signed off, ordering the forensics lab to reanalyze all samples under new standards and create a digital evidence file. Case SJ75309A was updated from archive to active review. After 26 years, Anna Lee's disappearance officially returned to the investigation table, starting with an aging file, a few evidence bags, and unverified signatures from 1975. In early June 2001, following Reeves' approval, the Santa Clara Forensics Lab began reanalyzing evidence in case SJ75309A. The process took place in the county's Criminalistic Center Biology Lab, newly equipped with STR-DNA analysis technology, the first time applied to local archived cases. The team, led by technician Evan Torres and 2 independent analysts sent by California, aimed to determine if the 1975 Monterey Highway samples retained biological viability and could yield genetic profiles for comparison. On June 4, Torres unsealed the first sample, a glass tube containing the brown hair from the wire fence. The sample was cleaned with a phosphate solution, dried in a sterile chamber, and the remaining root section cut for analysis. DNA extraction used a Shell-X kit, followed by PCR gene amplification. Despite low root cell quantity, the fluorescence reader detected signals at 4 core loci. STR analysis revealed a male-specific genetic profile, not matching any female DNA in the lab's archive. The lab log's first entry read, sample hash SJ705309AH01. Male profile low-quantity DNA, consistent across loci. 2 days later, the team analyzed the blood on the red fabric. The fabric was degraded, but the edge retained brownish-red residue. Torres isolated the fibers, soaked them in a lysis solution, and extracted DNA. Under a microscope, hemoglobin remained visibly reactive. After 48 hours, a complete DNA profile was obtained at 13 CODIS standard loci. Comparison showed it matched the hair sample, same DNA source, same male gender, same allele markers. The internal report stated, blood sample SJ75309AB01 and hair sample SJ75309AH01 originate from same individual, male donor. After confirming the internal match, Torres compared the DNA profile to the National CODIS database, which stores genetic records of convicted criminals and law enforcement personnel who provided reference samples. The request was sent to the FBI's Quantico Analysis Center via California's secure data portal. 3 days later, results returned to Santa Clara, the 13 loci DNA from SJ75309A fully matched Thomas Grady, a retired San Jose police officer who left in 1999. The system report flagged full match, confirmed. To rule out errors, the lab conducted a cross-check. A controlled DNA sample from Grady's 1996 SJPD personnel file, submitted per employee database regulations, was sent to Santa Clara and independently tested. Results matched at all STR loci, with a random match probability below 1 in 4.7 billion. The lab's official conclusion read, DNA profiles between sample SJ75309A and subject Thomas Grady are identical across all markers. Likelihood of random match, less than 1 in 4.7 billion. Torres and the two analysts signed the verification report. A copy was sent to California's State Forensics Lab for retesting, which returned identical results. Independent verification, full match confirmed. Both agencies agreed the DNA in the 1975 case samples could only come from one individual. Concurrently, the chemical analysis team re-examined the engine oil sample from the original scene. Mass spectrometry confirmed additives matching lubricants supplied by Ford Motor for SJPD's patrol fleet in the 1970s. While not identifying a specific source, this supported the possibility that the evidence linked to a law enforcement vehicle. On June 15, 2001, the comprehensive report was finalized. The 67-page file included STR charts, electrophoresis gel images, and statistical comparison tables. The typed conclusion read, hair sample and blood sample consistent with male contributor. Both samples genetically identical, full DNA match with Thomas Grady, retired law enforcement officer SJPD. Chain of custody verified, no contamination observed. The report was delivered to the cold case unit that afternoon, signed by the Santa Clara Forensics Lab director and stamped by the state lab. An electronic copy was stored in SJPD's modern evidence management system, while the paper copy was sealed in a red envelope and placed in the unit's safe. That evening, Olivia Carter received the first copy. She read each page carefully. The chart data revealed an undeniable truth. The 1975 evidence, the hair caught on the fence, and blood on the victim's fabric. Both carried the genetic markers of one man, Thomas Grady, the investigator who led the case nearly 30 years earlier. In the internal transfer memo, Carter noted briefly, results verified by two independent labs, evidence integrity confirmed, subject identified. On June 16, the official report was submitted to Reeves with a recommendation to open an internal investigation into Grady. All documents were classified confidential, active homicide. After confirmation, the forensics lab repackaged all biological samples in new preservation boxes, labeled with seal number 2001 SJ75 DNAR1. STR data was stored on a dedicated server and backed up on optical discs in a secure vault. The report concluded, DNA evidence recovered from 1975 crime scene provides definitive identification of one male contributor, Thomas Grady. A third report copy was sent securely to California's Criminal Investigation Bureau for long-term archiving. For San Jose's cold case unit, this was the first breakthrough in a case thought closed for nearly 3 decades. An old file, a few dried samples, and 21 century biotechnology had reconnected clues left unresolved since 1975, laying the foundation for the next investigation phase. After DNA confirmation, the cold case unit moved to the next step, reviewing SJPD's old operational records, focusing on radio logs, shift reports, and vehicle records from the 1975 disappearance period. The goal was to verify Thomas Grady's presence in Almaden Valley the night Anna Lee vanished. Data retrieval was assigned to technician Harold Kim, experienced in recovering analog radio recordings. The 1975 system used large reel-to-reel tapes, each storing up to 12 hours. Original tapes were kept in sealed tin boxes in SJPD's old data vault. On June 20, 2001, Kim and 2 audio engineers retrieved 4 tapes labeled Unit Dispatch, September 13, 14, 1975. Covered in thick dust but legible, they were taken to the tech room and played on a Revox A77, the only device compatible with the old format. The recovery process was logged per audio evidence protocol. After cleaning the tape surfaces and adjusting playback speed, static-heavy audio emerged with crackling interference. The first few minutes captured routine exchanges between dispatch and various patrol cars. At 11:57 p.m. on September 13th, Kim noted a male voice responding with Unit 214's call sign, Grady's vehicle identifier. The voice, confirmed as Grady's via training record samples, reported, leaving Capitol Drive-In, heading south on Monterey Highway. Dispatch acknowledged, logging the last position at 12:12 a.m. near Almaden Valley's border. A 16-minute signal gap followed, with no response from Unit 214, despite repeated dispatch checks. At 12:28 a.m., Grady's voice returned. All clear, weak signal. Continuing patrol in eastern sector. The brief, normal statement aligned with the time frame when witness William Trent reported seeing a police car parked near Almaden Road over 25 years earlier. Kim marked the tape segment, digitized it, time-stamped it, and sent it to Carter. She compared the signal gap to Grady's 1975 shift report, which stated, patrolled Eastern City from 11:30 p.m. to 1 a.m. No incidents. This conflicted with the radio log, placing his vehicle in the southwest, near Almaden Valley. Carter compiled a comparison table, noting discrepancy between reported patrol zone and actual radio location. On June 22, the Cold Case Unit requested 1975 vehicle maintenance logs to confirm if Unit 214 had a unique radio. Records showed all patrol cars used a shared frequency, differing only by call sign, ruling out signal mix-up. The 16-minute gap was thus confirmed as from Grady's vehicle, indicating he left his assigned area and was in Almaden Valley during the victim's disappearance. Torres suggested cross-referencing the audio timeline with the 1975 scene report. Results showed Grady was the first to log evidence at Monterey Highway on the morning of September 15, 2 days post-disappearance. His report stated, "I arrived at the scene before forensics, collecting initial samples to prevent loss. Per 1975 protocol, only forensics could collect samples. This action lacked cross-verification or supervisor reporting." Checking task assignments, Carter found Grady self-nominated as the forensics liaison, unusual for a missing person case without criminal grounds. To strengthen the data chain, Kim retrieved 2 more tapes from subsequent days. On the September 15th tape, a dispatch call to Grady at 8:43 a.m. asked Unit 214 confirm position. Grady responded, at Monterey site, collecting evidence, forensics not yet arrived. This placed him at the scene at least 2 hours before the forensics team, officially logged at 10:30 a.m. The near 2-hour gap was unnoted in the file. On June 25, Carter compiled all materials, tape copies, timeline comparisons, shift logs, and 1975 scene reports. She presented them in a cold case unit internal meeting. The data showed 3 consistencies. 1. Grady's Unit 214 was in Almaden Valley during the victim's disappearance. 2. He did not report this movement in his shift log. 3. He accessed the Monterey Highway scene before forensics, collecting and sealing evidence without a witness. Based on this, the cold case unit confirmed Grady's likely presence in Almaden Valley between 12 o'clock, 12:20 a.m. on September 14, 1975. The time frame of Anna Lee's disappearance. A 19-page summary report included voice spectrograph copies and a radio coordinate map. Carter's conclusion read, "Evidence indicates prior presence of Officer Grady at both the vicinity of disappearance and the subsequent evidence site without proper reporting. Timeline inconsistency verified by radio logs." The report was submitted to Commander Reeves the same day. In his remarks, Reeves wrote by hand, "Proceed with internal review of officer activity, subject Thomas Grady." This marked the start of a formal internal investigation to verify the data discrepancies and Grady's actual role in the final hours before Anna Lee's disappearance. After radio logs and shift records confirmed inconsistencies in Thomas Grady's statements, the cold case unit proposed an independent biological verification. Although the forensics lab had Grady's 1996 reference DNA, the team needed a contemporary sample to confirm the genetic profile belonged to the same individual and was free of storage errors. Lieutenant Reeves signed a covert surveillance order, authorizing the collection of biological material from Grady's household waste without prior notice. On July 2, 2001, 2 cold case unit investigators, Olivia Carter and Agent Raymond Holtz, began monitoring Grady, then 67, living with his wife in a quiet Los Gatos neighborhood south of San Jose. Retired for 2 years, he was known to neighbors as a calm gardener, tending plants and feeding cats each morning. The team set up an observation point half a block from his home, using a telephoto camera to document items he discarded in the curbside trash. Per protocol, they needed a sample likely to contain DNA, tissue, a bottle, or used personal items. On the morning of July 5th, Grady walked to a cafe 3 blocks away. After finishing, he tossed a paper cup into an outdoor bin. Carter followed, but the bin had been emptied into a larger bag by cafe staff. Lacking legal grounds to collect from private property, she abandoned the attempt. 2 days later, the team shifted to monitoring weekly routines. On the evening of July 8th, Grady placed his trash at the curb for pickup. Holtz, in plain clothes, waited until the garbage truck passed, then retrieved Grady's bag and transferred it to the Santa Clara lab under sealed protocol. Among the collected waste were common items: kitchen towels, food containers, used tissues, and a plastic water bottle. The forensics lab selected 3 items likely to contain epithelial cells, 2 tissues, and a plastic straw. They were coded LG01, LG02, and LG03. Technician Evan Torres, who handled the initial DNA analysis, oversaw testing. Each sample was processed in a sterile chamber, cells extracted with an enzyme solution, and DNA amplified via standard STR protocol. On July 10th, the first result emerged: sample LG02, a tissue with dried coffee stains, yielded a complete DNA profile at 13 loci. Compared to Grady's personnel file DNA and the 1975 scene samples, it matched perfectly. The report showed identical allele markers across all loci, with a random match probability below 1 in 10 billion. The bolded conclusion read, "DNA match confirmed, identical to reference profile and to 1975 evidence samples." To avoid challenges, Torres cross-verified with the second sample. LG03, the plastic straw, showed similar results, though with weaker signal intensity, still confirming the same individual's DNA. 2 independent samples matched the case data perfectly. The lab issued a 3-page report to the cold case unit on July 11th, stating, "Samples collected from domestic waste, Los Gatos residents, positively match DNA recovered from 1975 crime scene." Carter received the report near noon. Reviewing the identifying numbers, she had no doubt about the match. All evidence pointed to one fact: the lead investigator of Anna Lee's 1975 disappearance was the source of the crime scene DNA. She called Reeves, presented the findings, and requested authorization to prepare an arrest warrant. Reeves ordered the team to finalize all verification documents before submission to the Santa Clara District Attorney's Office. On July 12th, the cold case unit compiled the Grady confirmation package, including the 1975 crime scene DNA report, 2001 STR analysis, radio logs showing Unit 214's location in Almaden Valley, and comparisons of Los Gatos waste samples. All were printed, marked confidential, internal review. An encrypted digital copy was sent to the overseeing prosecutor, while the original was sealed in a red envelope, coded SJ75309A. Addendum 2001-07. To ensure legality, Torres included a collection protocol memo detailing the time, GPS coordinates, and certification that samples were taken from public space, compliant with California court precedent on waste evidence. The legal report confirmed the collection was lawful without a search warrant. That afternoon, the full package was submitted to the Santa Clara District Attorney's Office. The receiving attorney noted, "Evidence package sufficient for probable cause review." The cold case unit began drafting an arrest warrant under California Penal Code Section 836, with a request to temporarily freeze the suspect's assets and devices to protect data. As night fell, Carter returned to the office, looking south through the window. In her hand was a copy of the DNA report, its final bolded line. Complete genetic identity established between suspect and crime scene donor. After 26 years, lab numbers spoke for silent witnesses, closing a gap left open since 1975. In her notebook, she wrote one line, "Evidence ready, request warrant authorization." On the morning of March 9, 2003, nearly 2 years after DNA confirmation, the Santa Clara County Court approved an arrest warrant for Thomas Grady on charges of first-degree murder and obstruction of justice. The warrant followed a review of over 30 physical and technical evidence items collected by the Cold Case Unit from 2001-2002. At 6:15 a.m., an SJPD task force with Los Gatos Police surrounded Grady's home on Shannon Road, a quiet neighborhood with old oak trees. Grady, then 69, was awakened by loud knocking. Dressed in pajamas, he opened the door to 4 officers in bulletproof vests, with patrol cars flashing red and blue lights behind. Carter, leading the Cold Case Unit, stepped forward, reading the arrest warrant and Miranda rights. Grady did not resist, nodding silently and saying, "I knew this would come." He was handcuffed on the spot and escorted to a vehicle while the search team began examining the house under court order. The 2-story home, built in the late 1970s, had dated but tidy interiors. Carter and technician Torres oversaw evidence collection. The ground floor held a living room and garage. Upstairs were a bedroom, office, and storage closet with document boxes. In the garage, 2 old police jackets, a patrol cap, and worn black leather shoes hung on the wall. In the bottom drawer of a tool cabinet, they found a fixed-blade hunting knife with a wooden handle, 8 inches long, engraved Winchester, 1974. The knife was sealed, coded LG 2003-01. The same drawer held a folded 1975 topographic map, marked in red circling Almaden Valley, with a small X near the dry creek where the body was found. In the office, the team recovered 2 old files, a handwritten notebook listing Santa Clara County missing persons cases from the 1970s, and a sealed envelope with 6 black and white photos of the Monterey Highway scene. These matched the 1975 case photos, but had different handwritten numbers, indicating Grady kept personal copies outside official records. Carter ordered the area photographed, numbered, and items sealed per protocol. When forensics examined the garage's black leather shoes, they noted dried reddish-brown soil on the soles. A sterile swab collected a sample, sealed in a vial, coded LG 2003-07. On site, Torres used a handheld lens, identifying mica and iron oxide minerals, characteristic of Almaden Quicksilver soil. The sample was sent to the lab that day for mineralogical analysis. 3 days later, results confirmed soil composition consistent with Monterey, Almaden region. High ferric oxide content, identical to control sample from 1975 scene. In a living room wooden cabinet, the team found a small leather pouch with old personal items, a wristwatch, lighter, and a brass SJPD nameplate. Engraved SJPD. Beneath the drawer, a 35 mm unprocessed film roll and an old Pentax camera were seized. Lab processing later revealed 2 blurry frames of a dirt road near Monterey, matching the 1975 scene's angle, but from a lower perspective, possibly shot from a parked car near the fence. All items were detailed in a 14-page seizure report. Key items included Winchester hunting knife, LG 2003-01, 1975 Almaden topographic map with X mark, LG 2003-02, black leather shoes, size 11, LG 2003-03, police jackets and patrol cap, LG 2003-0405, handwritten notebook and envelope with scene photos, LG 2003-06, soil sample from shoe soles, LG 2003-07 blends, film roll, and Pentax camera, LG 2003-0809. 9 items were seized, photographed, and signed by 3 independent witnesses. The search lasted over 7 hours, ending at 1:40 p.m. Before leaving, Carter read the seizure report to Grady's wife, who silently signed with a trembling hand. Grady was taken to SJPD headquarters under strict supervision. At arrest, he did not resist or deny his identity, only requesting a lawyer. As officers led him through the hall, Carter watched silently. For her, the nearly 30-year case had reached an unforeseen turning point. On March 10th, the evidence was transferred to the Santa Clara Forensics Lab for detailed analysis. The shoe sole soil matched to the 1975 SJ75-309A sample. Same ferric oxide content, fine clay particles, and mercury ore metal traces. Unique to Almaden Quicksilver. A separate report was added to the scene file. 2 days later, the Santa Clara District Attorney received the full case file, over 600 pages, including DNA reports, location maps, radio logs, and new evidence lists. A copy was sent to the court for formal prosecution preparations. The seizure report's final note read, "All evidence items seized under warrant #SC0-3114 are relevant to case SJ75-309A and have been transferred to District Attorney's Office for prosecutorial review." As the sun set, in the Santa Clara evidence vault, new LG 2003 bags sat beside the old SJ75-309A box. 2 generations of evidence, nearly 3 decades apart, now on the same shelf. The new label read, "Reopened Case, Active Homicide Investigation. Primary Suspect Thomas Grady." After years of silence, Anna Lee's disappearance became a revived criminal prosecution, with evidence completed during that quiet morning search in suburban Los Gatos. In April 2003, after all search evidence was transferred to the prosecutor, the Santa Clara Forensics Lab began supplemental analysis and scene reconstruction to strengthen the physical evidence chain. Under technical director Dr. Marcus Ewan, forensic specialists built a 3D model of the Almaden Quicksilver Park body discovery site, combining new geodetic data and 1975 scene photos. This was SJPD's first archived case reconstructed with 3D laser scanning, aiming to determine the victim's movement, the assailant's position, and possible vehicle use during the crime. Technicians used a Faro LS 880 scanner to capture the hilly site's details within a 50-meter radius of the burial pit. Data was input into forensic mapper software, recreating terrain surfaces, slopes, wind direction, and object positions. The 3D model showed the burial pit at the hill's lowest point, with a 17-degree average slope. A small trail led north to the dry creek, where the jeans and belt were found. Hardened soil marks along the trail suggested a body was dragged. The team simulated movement using a virtual body model, matching Anna Lee's 52 kilograms weight and 1.62 m height. Applying slide mark depth and soil scrape direction, the software calculated a 25-30-degree drag angle, requiring 60-70 kilograms of force. This estimated the dragger's profile, male 1.78, 1.85 m tall, over 80 kilograms. This matched Grady's 1975 SJPD personnel record, 1.8, 2 m, 84 kilograms. Further analysis reconstructed soil disturbances from old scene photos. Using moonlight data from September 14, 1975, they determined object shadow directions, recreating a likely attack trajectory. Analysis showed the left shoulder and 8th rib fractures aligned with a force from the right rear at a 40-degree angle, consistent with a victim leaning forward or turning away. The simulation report stated, trajectory and angle of impact consistent with downward strike from right rear, likely standing assailant. The team cross-referenced this with the hunting knife from Grady's garage. Its 8-inch blade, with a 16-degree curve, matched a cut on the rib's inner surface, confirming the weapon's size compatibility with the skeletal damage. Though no soft tissue remained, Electron spectrometry of blade residue detected calcium and phosphate, human bone components. The lab concluded metal residue consistent with bone contact. Knife dimensions compatible with observed skeletal damage. Concurrently, the mineralogy team re-examined old soil samples. From the garage shoe soles, they extracted 0.3 grams of dry soil, comparing its mineral structure via X-ray diffraction to the 1975 SJ75-309, a sample and an Almaden Quicksilver control. The analysis showed 3 matching peaks: ferric oxide, quartz, and cinnabar, a compound unique to Almaden's defunct mercury mine. The scientific report stated, soil sample recovered from suspect's footwear contains trace cinnabar identical to geological composition of Almaden site, unique to that area. This opened further checks. Reviewing SJPD's vehicle records, the cold case unit found maintenance logs for the 1974 Ford Galaxy, Unit 214, used by Grady. Though decommissioned, its trunk was preserved in the equipment vault for training. Forensics obtained permission to sample dust and soil from metal crevices. Mineral analysis showed significant matches to the crime scene soil: high ferric oxide, fine clay with cinnabar and gray mica impurities. The report noted, trunk soil residues match Almaden terrain. No other patrol vehicle in 1975 fleet shows same mineral pattern. For statistical rigor, 3 other similar vehicles in storage were tested, but none showed matching minerals. This confirmed only Grady's vehicle had entered the mercury-rich Almaden area. In the technical report, Dr. Ewan concluded, traces of Almaden origin soil found in vehicle trunk and suspect's footwear substantiate direct contact with the crime site. Additionally, 3D scan data was paired with 1975 radio log coordinates. Plotting Unit 214's last position on the digital map showed it 480 meters from the burial pit by air. Terrain curves indicated a trail wide enough for a Ford Galaxy to access at night, explaining the large tire tracks noted at the scene. On April 18, the forensics lab submitted a 92-page comprehensive report to the cold case unit and the prosecutor's office. The typed conclusion, with the final line in bold, read, "Trajectory analysis confirms the assailant attacked from behind, height 1.78, 1.85 m. Soil composition from shoes and patrol car trunk fully matches Almaden samples. Radio log correlation places Unit 214 within a 500-meter radius of the burial site. Forensic reconstruction indicates the victim was attacked and dragged by an individual matching Thomas Grady's physical profile." Carter read the conclusion the next morning. Each point converged on one fact: every trace from the smallest soil grain to the bone fractures pointed in a single direction. The scientific evidence was no longer fragmented as in 1975, but formed a clear chain, showing Grady was not only present at the scene after the crime, but likely during the victim's death. The report, marked Final Forensic Reconstruction, April 2003, was signed by 5 forensic specialists and stamped with Santa Clara County's seal. All 3D data, mineralogical charts, and related samples were digitally archived in the original SJ75-309A Supplement 2003 file. The final note read, "Physical and geological evidence collectively confirm suspect's presence at the crime scene concurrent with victim's time of death." On April 22, 2003, after receiving the scene reconstruction and mineralogical analysis results, the cold case unit formally interrogated Thomas Grady at San Jose Police Headquarters. Interrogation Room 3 was equipped with a video recorder, digital audio, and 2 investigators, Olivia Carter and Raymond Holtz. Grady was brought in at 9:15 a.m., uncuffed, with a water bottle and a Miranda rights copy on the table. He skimmed it, nodded, signed acknowledgement, and sat with hands clasped. Carter began calmly, stating the purpose. "We're reviewing Anna Lee's 1975 disappearance. You were the lead investigator." Grady nodded slightly. "Yes, I remember. That case never had answers." Carter showed a color photo from Almaden Quicksilver Park, where the body was found. "Do you know this area?" Yes, it's the Southern Hills. I patrolled there. Were you there the night of September 13th into 14, 1975? Grady looked down, paused, then said, No, I patrolled the eastern sector, as my report stated. Holtz placed a paper before him, a 1975 radio log copy. This is the shift audio. Unit 214 signal dropped in Almaden Valley for 16 minutes. How do you explain that? Grady frowned slightly. I recall the old Ford's radio often lost signal in hilly areas. That could be why. Carter didn't respond, opening another file, photos of the hunting knife, leather shoes, and 1975 Almaden map from his home. These were found in your garage. Any comment? Grady sighed. The knife I bought as a cop. The map's just old. I collect them. After 20 minutes of initial dialogue, Carter moved to the core. She placed an enlarged STR DNA result photo. We found your DNA on 2 scene items, blood on the victim's fabric, hair on the fence. Can you explain that? Grady stared at the wall, silent, then said softly, Impossible. I never interacted with that girl after the case began. You mean you met her before? I did. I questioned her briefly at a theater about a car theft. Early 1975. That's it, Carter noted. Subject admits prior contact with victim before disappearance. Holtz pressed. Why is your DNA on evidence collected at the scene? You said you hadn't seen her for months. Maybe a lab error. I handled the evidence. I might have touched it accidentally, Carter countered. The lab confirmed the DNA came directly from blood on the victim's fabric, not surface contamination. The hair matches the blood source. How do you explain that? Grady bowed his head, hands clenched. After a pause he said, I don't know. Maybe someone set me up. Carter presented more evidence. Mineralogical results from soil on his shoes, matching Almaden Quicksilver. This soil is unique to Almaden's mercury mine. Did you drive there? I patrolled that area. Maybe soil stuck to my shoes then. In 1975, you reported patrolling the eastern city, never mentioning Almaden. I might have misremembered. The interrogation lasted nearly 3 hours. Carter read each forensic report section. Typo blood, matching his soil in the Ford Galaxy trunk, matching the scene, and his presence during the radio blackout, when the victim likely vanished. Each time, Grady offered a different excuse. Technical error, record mistake, coincidence. When asked about collecting evidence before forensics on September 15th, he had no specific explanation, only saying, I recall we were short-staffed, so I arrived early to secure the scene. Carter played the 1975 audio, where he reported, at Monterey's site, collecting evidence, forensics, not yet arrived. As the sound played, Grady stared at the recorder, unblinking. He then whispered, I didn't think this would come back after all these years. Why did you hide it? I didn't, I just did my job. At the end, Carter read a summary of his statements and asked for confirmation. Grady reviewed, made minor edits, and signed. The transcript noted key inconsistencies. Patrol location claims conflict with radio log data. Denial of victim contact, contradicts admitting meeting her in early 1975. DNA and blood explanations inconsistent with scientific evidence. Presence at the scene before forensics lacks basis in assignment orders. After signing, Grady said, You can believe what you want. I did nothing wrong. Carter replied briefly, We work with facts. He was then escorted out for detention processing. The interrogation transcript, numbered SJ75309 AS interview transcript #03, spanned 27 pages with audio and video. Carter's final note read, Subject unable to provide consistent explanation for presence of biological evidence linking him to victim. Multiple discrepancies noted. The session ended at 12:47 p.m., but the findings convinced the cold case unit that the 1975 events were finally resolving with unprecedented clarity. Thomas Grady's trial began October 7, 2003, at Santa Clara County Superior Court, presided over by Judge Eleanor McKay. The case drew local media attention, as Grady, a once respected SJPD investigator, was accused of killing the victim in the case he led nearly 30 years prior. Courtroom 4 was packed with reporters, the victim's family, and Grady's former colleagues. The prosecution was led by Assistant District Attorney David Sanderson, the defense by Richard Klein, hired by Grady's family. Sanderson opened with a clear timeline from the night of September 13, 1975, to the 2001 body discovery. He projected scene photos, location maps, and enlarged STR-DNA charts. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he said, "every piece of physical evidence, from hair, blood, soil, to shoe prints and radio logs, leads to the man before you today." He described how Grady leveraged his position, accessing the scene before forensics, collecting and sealing evidence without witnesses, thus controlling the investigation. Calmly, Sanderson detailed each evidence layer. First, the DNA. He called technician Evan Torres to testify. Torres explained the 2001 STR-DNA analysis, conducted twice independently, matching Grady's reference sample and 1975 scene evidence. Asked about random match probability, Torres replied, "Less than 1 in 4 billion. He showed a diagram linking samples, hair sample H01, blood sample B01, suspect reference sample R96. Identical, across 13 loci. The jury listened intently. The prosecution moved to physical evidence, the Winchester hunting knife, leather shoes, 1975, Almaden map with an X, and radio log copies showing Unit 214 at the disappearance site. Sanderson noted the shoe sole soil contained cinnabar matching Almaden's mercury mine, a unique marker. He displayed mineralogical spectra with 3 matching peaks, saying, "This isn't chance. This is geology, chemistry, the truth of the earth." On radio logs, the prosecution called technician Harold Kim. Kim described recovering 1975 tapes and highlighted Unit 214's 16-minute signal gap. "Its last broadcast was 480 meters from the burial site," he said, pointing to a projected map. "No other police vehicle signals were in that area then." A 3D scene reconstruction map was presented. The defense countered. Klein argued the DNA could be cross-contaminated since Grady handled evidence in 1975. "My client may have inadvertently transferred his cells during duty," he said. "There were no glove protocols then." He claimed the shoe soil didn't prove a crime. Grady patrolled all of San Jose, including Almaden. "No one can say when that soil stuck." The prosecution rebutted with Dr. Marcus Ewan, Santa Clara Forensics Lab Director. Ewan described the 3-layer evidence preservation, inner paper bags, wax-sealed metal boxes, and locked steel containers in a temperature-controlled vault. All DNA samples were unopened from 1975 until 2001 analysis, he said. "We checked fingerprints. Only those of the initial collector, Thomas Grady, were found." Ewan ruled out contamination due to tight sealing and complete inventory logs. The prosecution then showed the 3D scene reconstruction video, simulating drag direction and assailant height. The screen displayed assailant height range 1.78, 1.85 m, suspect height 1.82 m. Sanderson said, "Technology doesn't lie. Numbers don't take sides." The defense shifted focus to motive. Klein asked, "Did Grady have any conflict with Anna Lee, any evidence of a dispute?" The prosecution replied, "No, but physical evidence doesn't need motive, it needs truth." Klein suggested Grady was targeted for past SJPD criticism, but Judge McKay stopped him, deeming the argument speculative. The trial lasted over 10 days. Each day the prosecution added evidence, old scene photos, Grady's handwritten map, 1974, Ford trunk soil analysis, and independent lab DNA reports. When Klein objected, the court overruled for lack of scientific basis. In closing, Sanderson faced the jury. "This case has no witnesses, no confession, but we have DNA, traces, data, and truth. Listen to science, it's waited 28 years. In defense closing, Klein spoke softly, but at length. "Numbers can coincide, evidence can err. Don't let a vague past convict a man," pointing to Grady. "My client served this city for over 3 decades. A lab mistake can't erase that. After arguments, Judge McKay instructed the jury to deliberate. Discussions lasted 6 hours. On the evening of October 17th, the 12-member jury returned. The clerk read the verdict. On the charge of first-degree murder, not unanimous. On second-degree murder, guilty, 12/12. Murmurs filled the courtroom. Carter, seated behind, only bowed her head slightly. Judge McKay struck the gavel, declaring, Santa Clara County Court, after reviewing physical evidence, witness testimony, and scientific findings, finds the defendant Thomas Grady guilty of second-degree murder under California Penal Code Section 187. Grady was led away by bailiffs, expressionless. He whispered to his lawyer, "I didn't think it would end like this." The trial record detailed all arguments, listing 47 exhibited evidence items. The verdict's final page bore Judge McKay's signature and the court seal, noting verdict delivered October 17, 2003. Defendant found guilty of second-degree murder. After nearly 3 decades, Anna Lee's disappearance was ruled a homicide, with the perpetrator being the lead investigator of 1975. The Anna Lee case is not just a nearly 3-decade investigation, but a reflection of justice and life in modern America, where trust in the legal system coexists with concerns over human error. That Thomas Grady, a once respected officer, was the perpetrator shows that power and responsibility in law enforcement require transparent oversight. In today's society, where public agencies uphold justice, the case's key lesson is no one is above principle, and every process, however small, must be verified. The preservation of a hair and blood stain for 26 years, becoming decisive evidence via STR-DNA technology, proves science's power, but also reminds us that justice requires persistence and integrity from the start. America today grapples with debates on police transparency, evidence storage and fairness for victims in cold cases, issues the Anna Lee case touched early. The practical lesson is every individual, whether officer, prosecutor, or citizen, must uphold truth through principled action, uncompromised by negligence or power. Justice doesn't exist on its own. It requires people to build, protect, and sustain it daily. Like in Anna Lee's case, truth may come late, but if principles hold, justice will find its way. If you believe justice, even delayed, is worth waiting for, subscribe to our channel to follow more cold cases illuminated by time and truth. Thank you for joining Anna Lee's story, and see you in the next video, where each clue opens a new journey for justice.